Most people are emotionally hijacked by toxic situations dozens of times every single day, and they don't even realize it's happening. You're about to learn a psychological framework that will make you immune to emotional manipulation in the next 25 minutes. This isn't motivational fluff. This is based on decades of clinical psychology research on emotional regulation and stress resilience. If you've ever felt your heart racing during a confrontation, replayed toxic conversations in your head for hours, or let someone else's chaos destroy your inner peace, this changes everything. By the end of this video, you'll never react the same way again. Let's begin. Here's what's probably happening to you right now. You're sitting at your desk, focused on your work. Someone walks in, dripping with negative energy. They complain, criticize, dump their problems on you. And within 60 seconds, your entire emotional state is hijacked. Your calm? Gone. Your focus? Destroyed. Your peace? Shattered. Or maybe it's different. You're having a good day until you check your phone. One toxic text message, one passive-aggressive email, one guilt-tripping call from a family member, and suddenly, you're spiraling, angry, anxious, replaying the situation over and over. Here's the painful part. You did nothing wrong. You were kind. You were patient. You tried to help. You were being the bigger person. Meanwhile, toxic people seem completely unbothered. They dump their chaos and walk away fine while you're left carrying the emotional wreckage. This isn't your fault. You were never taught the psychology of emotional self-defense. Society conditioned you to absorb other people's toxicity like a sponge, to be understanding, to not take things personally, to rise above it. But that programming is exactly why you're suffering. And today we're going to reprogram your psychological operating system. What you're experiencing has a name in psychology: emotional contagion. Research from the University of California and published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology shows that emotions spread between people in as little as 20 milliseconds, faster than conscious thought. When someone brings toxic energy into your space, your mirror neurons automatically begin mimicking their emotional state. Your nervous system literally syncs with their chaos. But here's what changes everything. The most mentally powerful people have broken this automatic response. They've developed what psychologists call emotional impermeability, the ability to remain internally stable regardless of external chaos. This isn't about suppressing emotions or becoming cold. It's about strategic emotional regulation, understanding the psychological game being played and refusing to participate in it. Today I'm going to teach you this in 3 levels. Level 1. Recognition. How to identify when someone is attempting to hijack your emotional state. Level 2. Protection. Specific techniques to create psychological barriers in real time. Level 3. Mastery. How to flip the power dynamic and remain completely unaffected. By the end of this, you won't just understand this intellectually, you'll have practical tools you can use today in the next toxic situation you face. Let's dive into level 1. The first step to staying calm in toxic situations is recognizing the psychological mechanism behind emotional hijacking. Here's what most people don't understand. Toxic people aren't just venting emotions, they're unconsciously transferring their internal dysregulation onto you. Think about it like this. Imagine someone's internal emotional state is a pressure cooker about to explode. They can't handle their own anxiety, anger, or stress. So what do? They find someone stable, someone like you, and hey, dump it! The moment they complain, criticize, or create drama, they're attempting to make you feel what they're feeling. It's a subconscious psychological transfer. And the worst part? It works. Because you've been trained to be empathetic, to absorb, to help. Here's your first aha moment. When someone brings toxic energy to you, they're not looking for solutions. They're looking for emotional relief through transfer. They want you to carry what they can't carry. Let me give you a specific example. Your coworker storms into your office. I can't believe what just happened. This is absolutely ridiculous. Management has no idea what they're doing. Watch what happens to your body. Your shoulders tense. Your breathing shallows. Your heart rate increases. You didn't do anything, but you're now experiencing their stress response. Most people miss this completely. They think they're being supportive or listening, but psychologically, you've just been infected with their emotional state. Here's the pattern to recognize: the emotional dump. They approach with high-intensity negative emotion, the hook. They pull you in with a question, complaint, or dramatic story. The transfer. Your emotional state shifts to match theirs, the exit. They feel better and leave. You're left destabilized. Why does this work on you? Because you're psychologically programmed to connect. Your empathy, which is normally a strength, becomes a vulnerability when you don't have boundaries around it. Recognizing this pattern in real time is your first superpower. The moment you notice someone attempting emotional transfer, you've already broken 50% of their unconscious power over you. Now that you can recognize the pattern, let's talk about protection, specific techniques to stop emotional hijacking the moment it starts. Protection technique number 1, the observer shift. The moment someone brings toxic energy toward you, you need to make an instantaneous psychological shift from participant to observer. Here's how it works. Instead of absorbing their emotion, you observe it from a distance. In your mind, you narrate what's happening like a psychologist. This person is experiencing high emotional dysregulation. They're attempting to transfer their internal chaos. I'm noticing the pattern. This might sound simple, but it's neurologically powerful. When you shift into observer mode, you activate your prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, which immediately dampens the emotional hijacking coming from your limbic system. The language script in your head. Interesting. This person is in distress and attempting emotional transfer. I see the pattern. I'm not participating. Protection technique number 2, the emotional firewall. Imagine there's an invisible barrier between you and the toxic person, a psychological firewall. Their words, their energy, their chaos hits the barrier and stops. It doesn't penetrate into your internal space. Visualize this literally. When they're speaking, see their negative energy as a dark cloud that hits your firewall and dissipates, never reaching your core. This isn't positive thinking. This is a psychological anchoring technique used in cognitive behavioral therapy. You're training your nervous system to recognize boundaries between their emotional state and yours. The moment you do this, you'll feel a subtle but powerful shift. Their words lose impact. Their chaos feels distant. You remain internally still. Protection technique number 3, the tonality mirror. Here's where it gets advanced. Toxic people escalate because they're subconsciously trying to pull you up to their emotional level. They raise their voice, their gestures get bigger, their energy intensifies. Your instinct? Match them. Get defensive. Raise your voice back. This is exactly what they want because now you're in their emotional game. Instead, do the opposite. Lower your voice. Slow your speech. Use calm, measured tonality. What happens psychologically? You force them to meet your emotional level instead of you meeting theirs. It's a power reversal. They either have to calm down to match you, or their escalation becomes visibly irrational and unsustainable. The language script. Calm, slow voice. I understand you're upset. Let's take a moment and figure this out. Protection technique number 4, the strategic pause. When someone says something toxic, a criticism, an accusation, a manipulation, your brain wants to react immediately. That immediate reaction is the hijacking. Instead, implement a 3-5 second strategic pause. Breathe. Let the silence sit. Then respond. In those few seconds, you accomplish three things. You break the automatic reaction loop. You give your rational brain time to engage. You create psychological pressure on them. Silence is uncomfortable for toxic people. This single technique, the pause, will transform 80% of your toxic interactions. Protection technique number 5. The emotional labeling. This is a technique from FBI hostage negotiation psychology. When someone is emotionally hijacking you, label their emotion out loud. It sounds like you're really frustrated right now. I can see this situation is making you angry. You seem overwhelmed by this. What happens? You externalize their emotion. You put it outside of you and reflect it back to them. This does two things. It prevents you from absorbing it. It forces them to become conscious of their emotional state. The moment they become conscious of their emotion, it loses unconscious power. They either calm down or realize they're being irrational. Now we move into mastery, complete psychological immunity to toxic situations. At this level, you're not just protecting yourself. You're operating from such a stable internal foundation that toxic people can't even access you emotionally. You become what I call psychologically unreachable. Mastery principle number 1. Emotional sovereignty. Truly powerful people understand this. No one can make you feel anything without your permission. I know that sounds controversial. But they said something horrible. Yes, they created an external stimulus, but your emotional response is still your choice. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response." When you fully internalize this, you achieve emotional sovereignty. You own your internal state completely. Someone can bring chaos, but they can't penetrate your peace unless you hand them the key. Mastery principle number 2. The power of indifference. Here's a dark psychological truth. The most powerful response to toxicity is often no emotional response at all. Toxic people operate on emotional fuel. They need your reaction: anger, defensiveness, anxiety, guilt. When you give them strategic indifference, you starve the dynamic. This doesn't mean you're cold or uncaring. It means you've decided their toxicity doesn't deserve space in your internal world. The physical embodiment: relaxed posture, neutral facial expression, calm voice, minimal words. Okay. I see. That's your perspective. Watch what happens. They escalate briefly, trying harder to get a reaction. Then they give up, because you're emotionally unavailable for their game. Mastery principle number 3. The psychological high ground. In any toxic interaction, there are two positions: emotional reactivity, low ground, and calm observation, high ground. Whoever occupies the high ground controls the interaction. When you remain calm while they're chaotic, you're automatically in the superior psychological position. They're exposing themselves as unstable. You're demonstrating mastery. This isn't about ego. It's about strategic positioning. The high ground is where power lives. Mastery principle number 4. The exit strategy. Sometimes the most powerful move is to simply remove yourself from the toxic environment. Not in anger, not in defeat, in sovereignty. I'm going to step away from this conversation. I don't engage with this type of communication. We can revisit this when things are calmer. Then leave, physically or psychologically. This communicates something profound. My peace is non-negotiable. Your chaos has no authority over my internal state. Truly powerful people don't stay in toxic situations trying to win or prove something. They protect their energy like it's their most valuable resource. Because it is. Let's take everything you've learned and apply it to 3 specific scenarios you'll face. Scenario 1. Toxic coworker drama, workplace. Old. You. Your coworker approaches during your focused work time. Can you believe what Sarah said in that meeting? She completely undermined me, and management just sat there. I need you to back me up on this. Old. You absorbs the emotional dump. You feel tense. You get pulled into office politics. You spend the next hour mentally drained and distracted. New you. Same situation. But this time, you recognize the pattern instantly. Emotional transfer attempt detected. You implement the observer shift. This person is dysregulated and seeking emotional relief through transfer. I'm not participating. You use emotional labeling. Calm voice. It sounds like you're really frustrated about the meeting. Strategic pause. 3 seconds of silence. Then, I need to stay focused on this project right now. Maybe we can talk about it later when things are calmer. You've protected your energy. You haven't been rude. You've simply refused emotional infection. They leave. You return to calm focus. Scenario 2. Family guilt manipulation. Personal relationships. Old you. Your parent family member calls. I can't believe you're not coming to dinner this weekend. After everything I've done for you, you're so busy with your life that you don't have time for family anymore. I guess I'm just not important. Old. You feels guilt crash over you like a wave. You either cave and sacrifice your boundaries, or you feel terrible for days. New you. Same call. But now you recognize guilt manipulation through emotional transfer. You activate your emotional firewall. Their guilt hits the barrier. It doesn't penetrate. You stay in your emotional sovereignty. Their discomfort with my boundaries is not my responsibility to fix. You respond calmly. I understand you're disappointed. I have a commitment this weekend. I'd love to schedule time together next week. No defending, no over-explaining, no absorbing their guilt. They escalate briefly. Well, I guess you've made your priorities clear. You use strategic indifference. That's your interpretation. I'll call you next week to set something up. Then you end the call without guilt, because you've separated their emotional manipulation from your internal peace. Scenario 3. Public confrontation. Social setting. Old you. Someone disrespects you publicly, maybe insults you at a social gathering, challenges you aggressively, or tries to embarrass you in front of others. Old you either gets defensive and reacts, looking unstable, or swallows it and feels humiliated internally. New you. Same situation. Someone says something disrespectful publicly. You use the power of the pause, 5 seconds of calm silence while everyone watches. You maintain psychological high ground, relaxed posture, neutral expression, no emotional reaction. Then, with absolute calm, that's an interesting way to communicate. Or simply, okay. Then you redirect the conversation or calmly exit the situation. What just happened? You demonstrated complete emotional immunity. Everyone watching sees their instability versus your mastery. You didn't fight. You didn't fold. You simply refused to be moved. That's true psychological power. Now, let's talk about the responsibility that comes with this knowledge. What you've learned today is psychologically powerful. You now understand how to remain completely stable in situations that destabilize most people. You can recognize emotional manipulation. You can protect your internal state. You can occupy the psychological high ground in any interaction. This is not a weapon. This is armor. The difference is critical. You're not using this to manipulate, control, or harm others. You're using this to protect yourself from emotional hijacking. There's a profound difference between psychological self-defense and psychological aggression. Here's the frame. You're responsible for your peace, and they're responsible for theirs. You're not being cold. You're not being mean. You're simply refusing to participate in toxic dynamics. You're drawing boundaries around your emotional space and defending them. Most people will never understand this. They'll continue being emotionally tossed around by every toxic person they encounter. They'll keep absorbing chaos, carrying stress that isn't theirs, and wondering why they're always drained. But you're now part of the small percentage who sees the game. You understand the psychological mechanisms. You have the tools. Use them wisely. Use them ethically. Use them to protect what matters most, your inner peace. You're not the same person who started this video 25 minutes ago. You now see something most people remain blind to their entire lives: the hidden psychological game of emotional transfer. You understand how toxic people attempt to hijack your internal state, and you have specific practical tools to stop it. The next time someone brings chaos into your space, you'll recognize it instantly. You'll feel the attempted hijacking, and you'll choose differently. You'll activate your observer shift. You'll create your emotional firewall. You'll occupy the high ground, and they'll walk away while you remain completely calm, untouched, unmoved, sovereign. This is the beginning of true psychological power. Not power over others, but power over yourself. In the next video, we're going deeper. I'm going to show you the dark psychology of people who try to control you through silence, and exactly how to break their manipulation. Remember this: your peace is your power. Protect it like your life depends on it, because in many ways, it does. Now go practice this. The next toxic situation you face is your opportunity to demonstrate mastery. I'll see you in the next one.